45 minutes into the concert, Michael Jackson stopped mid-song. Tears in his eyes. A small letter in his hand. And a secret nobody knew. The music cut. The spotlight dimmed. 80,000 people at Wembley Stadium frozen in confusion. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, standing completely still in the middle of Man in the Mirror. His hand trembling. His voice gone. Security rushing toward the stage. But he didn't move. He just stared at that piece of paper, folded and worn, like it had been read 1,000 times. What was in that letter? What could make the most electrifying performer on earth stop his own show? Subscribe now, because what happened next changed everything we thought we knew about Michael Jackson. Rewind to 6 hours earlier. London, July 1988. The Dangerous World Tour was at its peak. Michael Jackson had performed 123 shows in 58 cities. Every night, the same perfection. Every move choreographed to the millisecond. Every note hitting exactly where it should. His team knew the routine by heart. Sound check at 3 p.m. Makeup at 5 p.m. Stage at 8 p.m. sharp. No deviations. Ever. But that afternoon, something was different. Michael's assistant, Frank Caschio, noticed it immediately. Michael was quieter than usual. He sat alone in his dressing room, staring at something in his hands. When Frank knocked, Michael quickly tucked it away. "I'm fine," he said. But his voice cracked. Frank had worked with Michael for years. He knew when something was wrong. The letter had arrived that morning. Hand-delivered to the hotel. No return address. Just a name scribbled on the envelope. For Michael Jackson. Please read. It's about Emma. Emma. A 7-year-old girl from Manchester. Blonde hair. Blue eyes that sparkled when she smiled. But Emma hadn't smiled in months. She was dying. A rare heart condition the doctors said was inoperable. Too complex. Too risky. Too expensive. Her family had exhausted every option, spent every penny they had, knocked on every door. The NHS couldn't help. Private hospitals wanted £350,000 up front. Money they didn't have. Money nobody had. Emma's older sister, Sarah, was 14. She had read about Michael Jackson visiting sick children in hospitals. She had seen photos of him holding babies, sitting with terminally ill kids, making them laugh even when they couldn't stand. Sarah knew it was a long shot. But she wrote anyway. A 6-page letter, every word soaked in desperation and hope. She told Michael about Emma's favorite song. Heal the World. How Emma would play it every night before bed, even when she was too weak to dance. How Emma believed Michael Jackson was magic. How she told Sarah that if Michael knew about her, he would help. Because that's what heroes do. But what Sarah didn't know was that her letter would never make it through Michael's usual channels. His management screened thousands of fan letters every week. Most never reached him. This one shouldn't have either. Except for one person. A security guard named Marcus. He found the letter in a pile marked Fan Mail Archive. Something about it made him pause. Maybe it was the handwriting, desperate and shaky. Maybe it was the photo of Emma taped to the last page, her smile forced but brave. Marcus broke protocol. He slipped the letter into Michael's personal bag. And that morning, Michael Jackson read it. Michael sat in his dressing room holding that letter. Reading it again and again. Emma's story. Sarah's plea. The medical reports attached marked urgent deteriorating condition. He closed his eyes. He could see Emma's face. He could hear Heal the World playing in a small bedroom somewhere in Manchester. A little girl believing in magic while her heart gave out. Frank knocked again. Michael, it's time. 30 minutes to showtime. Michael stood up, folded the letter carefully, and put it in his jacket pocket. I need you to do something for me, he said. Find this family. Find out which hospital can do the surgery. I don't care about the cost. Just find them. Frank stared at him. Michael, the show starts in I know, Michael said. Just do it. Please! The show began on time. The pyrotechnics exploded. The dancers moved in perfect sync. Michael hit every mark, every spin, every moonwalk. But something was off. The band noticed it. The backup singers felt it. Michael wasn't fully there. His mind was somewhere else. In a hospital room. With a girl named Emma. 45 minutes in. Man in the Mirror started. Michael's most personal song. The one that meant everything to him. The crowd sang along, 80,000 voices rising. Michael stood center stage, microphone in hand, ready for the second verse. And then he stopped. The music kept playing. The dancers kept moving. But Michael Jackson stood frozen. He reached into his jacket pocket. Pulled out the letter. Unfolded it slowly. And as the spotlight hit him, tears rolled down his face. The band didn't know what to do. Keep playing? Stop? The musical director looked at the sound engineer. The sound engineer looked at Frank. Frank looked at Michael. And Michael looked at the letter. The crowd started to notice. The singing faded. A confused murmur spread through Wembley Stadium. Security moved toward the stage, thinking something was wrong. But then Michael raised his hand. One gesture. Stop. The music cut. The stadium fell into complete silence. 80,000 people holding their breath. Michael Jackson, tears streaming down his face, holding a piece of paper like it was the most precious thing in the world. He walked to the edge of the stage, knelt down, and spoke into the microphone, his voice breaking. There's a little girl, he said. Her name is Emma. She's 7 years old. And she's dying. The crowd gasped. Some people started crying immediately. She loves this song. Michael continued. She plays it every night. And she believes that if I knew about her, I would help her. Michael paused, wiping his eyes. She's right. Subscribe if you want to see how this moment changed everything. Drop a comment telling me if you believe in the power of one person to change a life. Because what happened next will leave you speechless. Michael stood up. He folded the letter carefully and put it back in his pocket. He turned to his band. Keep playing, he said. But slower. Softer. The band started. Man in the Mirror. Again, but this time it was different. No pyrotechnics. No dancers. Just Michael. And his voice. And a promise he made to a little girl he never met. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. He sang, his voice raw and vulnerable. I'm asking him to change his ways. The crowd joined in, but quieter now, reverent. Michael sang the entire song with tears in his eyes, and when he finished, he didn't take a bow. He didn't wave to the crowd. He simply walked off stage. The crew was in chaos. Michael never left stage early. Ever. But he did that night. Because he had a phone call to make. Backstage, Frank was already on it. He had called every hospital in Manchester. He had reached out to the top cardiac surgeons in the UK. He had Emma's medical file faxed to specialists in 3 countries. And he had an answer. There was one surgeon. Dr. Magdi Yacoub. Egyptian-British. One of the best heart surgeons in the world. He had seen Emma's case before. The NHS had consulted him, but the hospital couldn't afford his fee. £350,000. Plus surgical team. Plus post-operative care. Close to £500,000. Michael didn't hesitate. Pay it, he said. All of it. But don't use my name. I don't want anyone to know. Just make sure Emma gets the surgery. Tomorrow if possible. Frank nodded. He made the calls. By midnight the arrangements were made. Dr. Yacoub agreed to perform the surgery. The hospital was booked. Emma's family received a call. Anonymous donor. Surgery scheduled. No cost to them. Sarah couldn't believe it. Her mother collapsed in tears. Her father sat in stunned silence. Emma, too weak to fully understand, just smiled and said, I told you. Michael Jackson is magic. The surgery happened 3 days later. 7 hours. Touch and go. Dr. Yacoub later said it was one of the most complex procedures he'd ever done. But Emma survived. Not just survived. Thrived. Within weeks, she was walking. Within months, she was running. Within a year, she was dancing. 2. Heal the world. In her bedroom. Like she always dreamed. But here's the part that nobody knew. Michael Jackson didn't just pay for the surgery. He paid for the follow-up care. The medications. The rehabilitation. He set up a trust fund for Emma's education. And he did it all anonymously. Emma's family tried to find out who the donor was. They called the hospital. They contacted the surgeon. Dr. Yacoub smiled and said, "Someone who believes in miracles." Michael Jackson never publicly acknowledged what he did. He never used it for PR. He never mentioned it in interviews. When asked about his charity work, he talked about his Heal the World Foundation, about his visits to hospitals. But he never mentioned Emma. Because for Michael, it wasn't about being seen. It was about being human. Years later, after Michael passed away in 2009, the truth started to surface. Dr. Yacoub, in a private interview, mentioned the anonymous donor for Emma's surgery. He didn't name Michael directly, but he said, "It was someone who understood that saving one life could change the world." Frank Cascio, in his memoir, hinted at the story. He described Michael's tears that night at Wembley. The letter in his pocket. The promise he made. But even then, he protected Emma's privacy. He didn't give her full name. He didn't reveal the details. It wasn't until 2015, when Sarah, now in her 40s, decided to share the story. Emma was alive. Healthy. She had graduated university. She had a career. She had a life she was never supposed to have. And Sarah wanted the world to know. She posted on social media. She shared the letter she had written as a 14-year-old girl. She shared the hospital records showing anonymous donor full payment. She shared photos of Emma dancing, living, thriving. And she ended with this: "Michael Jackson saved my sister's life. Not because he had to. Not because anyone was watching. But because he believed that one person could make a difference. He was right. Emma is alive because Michael Jackson decided to be the man in the mirror." The post went viral. Millions of people shared it. Articles were written. Documentaries mentioned it. And suddenly, the world saw Michael Jackson differently. Not just as a performer. Not just as a pop star. But as a human being who used his power quietly, humbly, sacrificially. The letter Sarah wrote, the one Michael held on stage that night, was later donated to a charity auction. It sold for £75,000. Every penny went to children's heart surgery funds. The letter is now in a private collection, but photos of it circulated online. On the last page, in Michael's handwriting, were 3 words: "I will help." Emma is 43 years old now. She has 2 children of her own. She works as a children's cardiac nurse. She spends her life doing for others what Michael Jackson did for her. Giving hope. Making miracles. Believing in the impossible. She keeps a photo of Michael Jackson in her office. Next to it, a quote: "If you enter this world knowing you are loved and you leave this world knowing the same, then everything that happens in between can be dealt with." Every year on the anniversary of her surgery, Emma visits the hospital where Dr. Yacoub saved her life. She brings flowers. She talks to the current patients. Children fighting the same battles she fought. And she tells them about the man who believed in miracles. The man who stopped his show to make sure one little girl got to live. She doesn't tell them it was Michael Jackson right away. She tells them it was someone who understood that fame means nothing if you can't use it to help. Someone who knew that stopping mid-song to save a life was more important than any standing ovation. The letter Michael held that night at Wembley was eventually framed. Sarah kept it for years, but when she shared Emma's story publicly, she knew it belonged somewhere meaningful. It now hangs in Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, in the cardiac wing. A reminder to doctors, nurses, and families that miracles happen when someone decides to act. Below the letter, a plaque reads, "In memory of Michael Jackson, who taught us that healing the world begins with one heartbeat at a time." Michael Jackson never got to meet Emma. He never saw her grow up. He never knew that the girl he saved would spend her life saving others. But maybe he did know. Because that's what Michael believed. That one act of kindness creates a ripple. That one life saved can change 1,000 more. That being human means choosing love when the world chooses indifference. That night at Wembley, when Michael Jackson stopped mid-song, he didn't just pause a performance. He paused to be human. To feel. To act. To prove that being a superstar doesn't mean being superhuman. It means using your humanity when it matters most. The letter stayed in his pocket for weeks. He would take it out sometimes, alone in his dressing room, and read it again. A reminder. A promise. A connection to something bigger than fame. Michael Jackson's legacy isn't just his music. It's moments like this. Moments nobody was supposed to know about. Moments that prove that the real measure of a person isn't how many records they sell, or how many awards they win. It's how they respond when nobody is watching. It's the lives they touch when the cameras are off. It's the difference they make when there's no applause. Share this story if you believe in the power of one person to change everything. Subscribe and make sure Michael Jackson's true legacy lives on. Because the world needs to know. Not just what he did, but who he was. A man who stopped mid-song to save a life. A man who proved that healing the world starts with healing one heart at a time. Emma's story is Michael's story. And it's a story that reminds us all, we have the power to be someone's miracle. We just have to choose to stop. To listen. To act. To be human. Just like Michael Jackson did. 45 minutes into a concert. With tears in his eyes. A letter in his hand. And a secret that changed everything.